reckon we're in something of a golden era of co-op gaming. From Helldivers 2 to Deep Rock Galactic, Darktide and Roboquest, there's no shortage of absolute banger shooter games to play with your mates. But all these games differ in how they create an impactful sense of team play.
Some have you click on loads of clankers in stressful but cinematic firefights,
whilst others prefer to have you run around in a frantic game of whack-a-mole to keep the team ship afloat.
Jump Space comes from the latter school of cooperation and draws many comparisons to Sea of Thieves but in space.
It's not an unfair comparison given the whole patching holes in a ship thing, but that's where the similarities end. Firstly, Jump Space is strictly PvE and launched with a working field of view slider unlike Sea of f***ing horse blinkers. Secondly, Jump Space has a more grounded sci-fi aesthetic and doesn't look like someone wanked on a Funko Pop till it became sentient. So what is it? Jump Space is a mission-based 1 to 4 player PvE space shooter that lets you seamlessly transition from piloting a ship to fighting on foot.
Like what we imagined when booting up Starfield before Todd Howard bursts out your monitor to code in another loading screen.
In a nutshell, the gameplay loop is as follows. Jump to a place, do some stuff, loot some things, jump back and upgrade your ship. All whilst you and your crew find yourselves in designated roles like the captain, the gunner, the ship engineer and the pizza chef. Sorry, it's just the pineapple. Has it got space? Yes. Has it got jump? Double jump. That's 2 jumps for your money. You even press space to do it. Has it been fully released though? No. It's an early access game, which is usually a term I sneer at, but with an entry fee of £16.75, an impressive roadmap of upcoming features, and a developer that seemingly gives a shit about fan feedback, me and the boys were willing to give it a go, and I've got to tell you, I think Keepsake Games are onto a winner with this one. The lore is as follows. At the center of the galaxy, an evil corruption virus has turned all of humanity's toasters and fleshlight launches into evil AI-controlled killing machines known as the Legion of Steel. Speaking of AI, it's worth mentioning that the majority of the game's voice acting is AI-generated, but they'll eventually be replaced by real voice actors.
We are gathering up crews of survivors willing to fight.
And thank God, because you can tell. But it's not too distracting, because the only characters that join you during missions are both AIs anyway.
We're joining a human resistance group that plans to use jump-capable ships to fight back against the Legion
and push to the center of the galaxy.
Our small group of survivors are holed up in a snowy hangar somewhere with the intention of answering a distress call from another resistance group. Our character volunteers to make contact, but we're ambushed by the Legion and our ship crashes. But thankfully we're only one basic movement tutorial away from another crashed ship, the occupants of which have perished except the ship's helmsman core. What's the helmsman core? An AI named Iris who's essential for piloting ships.
Don't shake the light bulb.
Who is basically just the voice in your head that tells you what to do. I won't talk much more about the lore because it's arguably the least developed aspect of the game, and is clearly just setting the stage for a story that will unfold in future updates. But it's there if you want to hear it by interacting with the various characters dotted around the hangar between missions. Here's my brother Riley, humanity's greatest engineer, whose job is to run around solving all of the ship's problems, whilst I just blast music and fly directly into enemy gunfire. Turns out you can ping stuff.
Fire extinguisher. A fire extinguisher. Fire extinguisher. Fire extinguisher. Fire extinguisher. Fire extinguisher.
There's a lot to do at the hangar, so we held a spine-breaking competition with our friend Idris and had a little dance by the jukebox, which has some absolute belters on it, by the way. Obligatory gun range, or we could just shoot each other, or swing around like bored primates waiting for each other to ready up. You can customize the ship's colors both inside and out, and rename it. Yes, I'm a fully grown man. There's also this guy who lets you change your spacesuit, which are unlocked by completing challenges and are purely cosmetic at the moment, but will get perks later on. Good number of color customization options too. Each mission is split into multiple sectors that you can plan your route through using the onboard jump map. Longer missions have more sectors, with the main objective at the end. Objectives vary from raiding a crashed Legion cargo ship to activating space artillery in aid of the galactic war. In the early game, you're going to want to collect these galaxy map relays, as this is how you unlock new sectors on the galactic map, with the location of undiscovered ship components marked as you hover over each sector, and they'll show up during any mission. Alright, let's talk about the ship. There's currently 2 ships to choose from, the Dart, which we'll talk about later, and the much larger Catamaran you find during the prologue, which is where we install Iris and learn how to fix the ship using repair kits. The green bit is the ship's health and the blue bit is the ship's shields, both of which can be repaired using materia, the resource you collect and use exclusively during missions to craft things like shields that need to be installed outside, or more of those repair kits, or weapons, or fire extinguishers and ship components. You get the idea. Materia can be acquired by finding materia canisters and disassembling them back at the ship, or found as small amounts on the floor, but you get the majority of it from destroying ships, flying up to the blue orb they leave behind, and screaming at your engineer to empty the materia canisters outside the ship. Unless you're playing solo, in which case it's done by BuddyBot. Think Bosco from Deep Rock Galactic, but you don't have to tell him what to do. Who makes looting stuff infinitely easier in solo because he can teleport certain things to the ship. And he's not too bad on foot either.
Take that, you dirty machine.
Does he want to 'em. I like when he glazes your aim too.
Fine shot indeed.
Or his own aim as the ship's gunner.
But did you see that shot?
What a shot, what's that, an inch? The ship also has a sensor that lets you scan for stuff, which is most useful at the start of each sector, since then you can plan your attack based on which enemies are present. We can also craft ship components, such as the engine, which need to be installed manually and can go critical if you take enough damage during dogfights, but you just need to spend materia to fix it with the occasional skill check thrown in. But if the ship components stay critical for too long, they'll be destroyed and you'll have to craft more with materia. Once you discover a component for the first time, you should return it to the hangar, because then you can craft them on the ship and upgrade it. The highest level for ship components currently being Mark III, but I believe they're adding more. Installing ship components uses ship power, which you need to manage manually by fitting them as Tetris pieces on this grid, with various ship reactors that have different power grid layouts, and different ship parts that have different power plug shapes, which sounds complicated, but this is mostly stuff you get your engineer to do whilst you pilot the thing. But the ability to tweak your power grid layout at the hangar can't come soon enough. Even this manual airlock cycle is here for a reason, to create tension when you're panicking to flee the sector. I'm the captain of this ship. If I want to edge it, I will. As the pilot, you can dock and undock at certain points, or boost to avoid incoming damage, or waste some of your finite ship ammunition, which is shared between the pilot and the gunner and loaded by either the team's engineer or buddybot based on how many players are present. So there's always plenty to do on the ship, and it's interesting how much the gameplay loop is mixed up by switching to the smaller ship, the Dart, which trades a couple shield slots and some of the gunner's weapons for a faster ship, with dual pilot cannons and a smaller hitbox that's quicker to navigate inside, making it a better fit for solo play. It just doesn't have a pizza maker, so despite all those benefits, it sucks. At the end of a sector, there's usually a jammer stopping you from warping to the next one, so we use the ship's ejection tube to launch ourselves directly at it and disable it. Sometimes the game's nice enough to give you a teleporter next to the jammer that lets you send loot back to the ship, but mine a nitpick, I don't love that everyone has to be present to use the teleporter. Once you've disabled the jammer, it's time to jump to the next sector, except right before we do, we get ambushed by Legion ships, so the game's nice enough to give us a reticle to aim for to lead the shot, which means the space combat requires just enough precision to make these sick ship explosions feel earned. Okay, that one was Here's that better looking one from the intro again. But just like your willy when the car vibrates, those ships get bigger and harder. Like these corvettes that you disable first and board to clear out the enemies and steal the ship component from within. There's also snipers, which can shoot you from outside your ship's range. The ship combat is responsive and satisfying. One of many reasons I hogged the pilot seat from my friend Idris.
I'll waggle like this, you'll think I'm a big bird. You can walk on it like you've got legs.
I hate our pilot.
Once you complete a mission, you'll be awarded 3 things. The green stuff is your character XP, the yellow stuff are credits, which you use to buy preparation items back at the hangar, and these orange things are called ingots, which are used for upgrading your ship components. Ingots are rewarded for completing missions and challenges, or from bringing extra ship components you find back to the hangar. It's also worth mentioning that anything on board your ship will be automatically sold when you return to the hangar, which is only frustrating for one reason. Some missions require you to jump back to the hangar manually, whilst these 3 objective types jump you automatically after the main objective is completed, so don't get caught out like we did after dropping something we intended to keep. However, any items you're currently holding will be carried between runs, unless you fail the mission by having your ship destroyed, in which case you lose everything, which on the one hand sucks because you've lost all your cool guns, but on the other hand you've only got 3 inventory slots, so the less guns you have the more loot you can carry, and you can just buy new weapons with credits at the hangar anyway. Then there's this guy, Vosk, who deals in artifacts, which are items you find on runs that need to be installed on the ship to grant gameplay changing bonuses, such as pineapple power, allowing you to permanently increase your damage every time you eat a slice of pizza, meaning yes, you can craft a rocket launcher specifically to blow yourself up with it, then intentionally undercook the pizza slices so it heals you less and you get more damage. There's also resonant amplifier, which increases the level of each artifact either side of it, meaning there's a little metagame to play when placing artifacts on this 5-wide rack. If you don't like the artifact you're holding, you can use it to upgrade one you've already placed, and you can remove artifacts but they'll be destroyed. And the same is true for the artifacts you forget to install before warping, like a dingus, a mistake that's easy to make when the game rushes you with a countdown timer, and all artifacts are wiped at the end of a run, adding just a dash of roguelike flavour, but mix up the combat in interesting enough ways to spice up each run from the last. I just hope the artifact pool doesn't get too diluted with crap, similar to what it's like returning to Binding of Isaac after a few updates. As for movement, you can grapple to specific anchor points, which are scattered around combat arenas, loot locations, and the outside of your ship for faster traversal. The range at which you can do so feels like it's up to the grapple point, all of which realign you to that surface, resulting in some very interesting combat arenas. More of this please, because it's sick. Turns out we don't even need our ship, we can just zip over there with our spacesuit and seamlessly snap to the ground when we get there. Mwah. Fighting in zero gravity is my favourite part of the combat, because if you find yourself surrounded, you can just boost away and pick them off from orbit, with virtually no damage drop off on the weapons. Let's talk about this multi-tool, which is used for both zapping objectives through your teammate's head, whilst Iris goes on about some guy called Emmanuel Bypass, and killing enemies because it also doubles up as your infinite ammo starter pistol. Now this starter pistol might not feel like much at first, but these enemies have obvious red glowing weak spots that make a satisfying sound when you hit them. And given the multi-tool has infinite ammo, you can just hose them down with hip fire. As far as starter pistols go, it's all reliable. Ground enemies can vary from tiny kamikaze drones to large shielded death machines complete with exploitable red weak spots from various angles. They do quite a lot of damage, and I don't think this scales based on difficulty. You just face more enemies of a higher quality. There's 5 difficulties in this game, but the first 2 are just to ease you into the gameplay loop, with difficulties 3, 4 and 5 having bigger ground enemies, corvettes, sniper ships, and a higher chance for environmental hazards to trigger like solar flares and meteor storms. Whilst on foot you have a shield, but it takes quite a while to recharge. Wait for it, wait for it. There we go. So despite the fast-paced movement, taking cover every now and then is mandatory. If you go down, you can be revived, but it will cost materia. However, if you die, the ship will take 15% hull damage. It'll also drop all your items by your body and respawn on the ship, but if the ship dies, the run is lost. Oh god, we have to get to a jump suit. What happens if we don't?
Yeah, I need to see it.
No, we're still dancing on the Mine a nitpick, I don't love that enemies can still shoot after they've died, especially because right now it feels like the enemies prioritise attacking the host. Don't believe me? Look at this. He alerted it, but it said F you specifically anyway. Maybe it's an homage to Helldivers 2. Let's talk about the weapons, all of which can be found during missions or bought at the gun range in the hangar, which by the way you can totally re-roll by just exiting to the menu and reloading, which is probably a good idea because each weapon has a mark level ranging from 0 to 3 that seems to determine how much damage it does and how sick of a scope it's got. The shotgun kind of sucks and struggles greatly at range unless it's Mark 3, in which case it pairs extremely well with melee weapons. We'll get to those. The side clip SMG also ranges from ass to assassin based on its mark level. The halberd assault rifle is burst fire and has quite a bit of recoil, but once you manage that, its efficiency also depends on its mark level. The javelin sniper rifle, however, is goated S tier based beyond belief across all mark levels. Even without a scope, this thing will rip Legion scum to pieces, as long as you're hitting those weak points. The LMG is also pretty good at all mark levels, it just has a long reload and runs out of ammo quickly. There's also 2 heavy weapons, the rocket launcher, which has a deceptively large explosion radius, and the railgun, which in my opinion doesn't do enough damage for how long it takes to charge. The main problem with both these weapons is that they have limited ammo, can't be refilled, and generally feel like overkill for most targets. Right, onto the melee weapons. There's 3 in this game, or 5 if you count a slice of pizza and the gnome lord who seems to follow me into every game I play now. There's the crowbar, the wrench, and the heat blade, all of which swing 3 times, with the last strike doing the most damage. The crowbar, oh my god, it's Gorban Freedom, has a faster swing speed but less damage than the wrench, which swings slower and hits a lot harder, both of which can be used to block incoming damage. I believe it's roughly half. But not only that, you can deflect shots back at enemies if you time the block right. However, neither the wrench or the crowbar are very accurate when deflecting shots, unlike the heat blade, which despite sitting somewhere between the 2 in terms of damage and speed, can deflect shots with perfect precision, which feels fantastic, and I hope they never remove it. It's refreshing to play a game with evil sci-fi robots that doesn't have dogshit melee weapons. Jump Space is an interesting mix of ship combat, first-person shooting, looting, crafting and ship maintenance that all blend to create a unique cocktail of roguelike co-op adventure, with its biggest fault being its repetition, which is mostly due to the fact it isn't yet feature complete. It's just whether Keepsake can maintain its promise of making the best game they possibly can, but considering how receptive they are to feedback, I have a feeling we're in safe hands. Please get rid of the kill boxes and some of the ground sections. It doesn't make sense in a game where we have jetpacks to die in a random hole, thanks. It's hard not to look forward to the things on the roadmap. I mean, they've got new guns, ships, components, artifacts, enemies, missions, sectors, a player trace system, ground bosses, just about everything you could want, and all for an extremely reasonable entry fee. But above all else, there's something charming to me about the tone of Jump Space, a sort of defiant adventure, a feeling of sure we might be fighting a galactic war against an evil AI virus, but we're gonna have a fucking blast doing it. And considering how well that translates into the gameplay, I reckon Jump Space deserves more players.